A gift from a first date a century ago resulted in a huge inheritance. Hey, it's Mike. Thanks for tuning back in. So this is about the 1917 Collins McCarthy E135 Babe Ruth card. I've got the whole story here from Sports Collectors Daily. It comes to us from 2021. I'm going to get right into it. First of all, I went to see The Strangers, Chapter 1, last night. It was good, fun. It was set up. It wasn't great. It was basically the same exact thing as the original Strangers from 15, 16 years ago. But there are two more movies coming out this year that will continue the story, so I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful. It was very well done. Before I get into the Babe Ruth card, I want to talk about Just Collect. They sponsor this video, this series, Attic Find Friday series, and led by Leighton Sheldon. They are one of the largest vintage buyers in the entire country. You can go to their website if you're interested in selling any of your vintage cards. JustCollect.com. Fill out the free appraisal form to get an appraisal on what you own and what you're looking to sell. Or you can just email Leighton at leighton@justcollect.com, again, for a free appraisal. The link to the website is in the description to this video. All right, so in the early 1920s, Walter Stivers and Lillian Glenn of Iowa had dinner and a movie date together. This is a century ago, more than a century ago at this point. Walter, as a token of appreciation, I guess, as a first date gift, gave her a Babe Ruth card. She then, when she got home, she mounted it into her memory book called My High School Days. It's really sweet, right? This is such a classic. It feels like the 1950s, but it's the 1920s. Just so innocent. The card, of course, shows Babe Ruth as a pitcher for the Red Sox, because he still was at that point. It is from the 200 card set from the Collins McCarthy Candy Company of San Francisco. They also produced Z-Nuts baseball cards. Lillian wrote underneath the card, baseball and Cracker Jacks in her memory book. No word anywhere of whether she was a baseball fan. I assume she was, and that's why he was giving her a Babe Ruth card. Lillian was born in 1906, graduated in 1923 from high school. Walter was born in 1903, so he was a few years older than her. They married on Christmas Day in 1928. Sadly, Lillian passed away in 1941 at just the age of 35 when she was doing laundry outside. They had an outdoor washing machine. She had an asthma attack and fell into the washing machine and drowned. Their son, Donald, was just 3 years old at the time. Walter passed away 37 years later in 1978. He still owned the memory book at the time. He had remarried, and his widow, who seemed like was not very popular with the family, decided she was going to sell all of his belongings immediately. And according to the grandchildren, she put his coin collection up for sale the day he died and sold it that day. She was selling the memory book, and Donald was born 3 years before Lillian passed away. Donald bought it from her for $5 or $7. The memory is a little iffy there in the story, apparently. Donald and his brother had baseball card collections as kids. They lost them in the 1960s when a flood hit and flooded into their basement, destroying all of their cards. Randy, remember Randy, Walter's grandson, also collected and put cards in his bike spokes. When he went to college, he left them in the closet, and when he came back, his mother had thrown them away. These are very, very common stories. I even remember my dad telling me about putting cards in bike spokes, and I took a common card. Because, in the 80s, we thought cards were worth money. They weren't just, at the time, fun collectibles like they were in the 1950s and 60s. But I remember putting cards on my bike spokes just to hear the sound that my dad and other people in the 50s and 60s had heard. Very common story. Mom throwing them away. Donald passed away in 2021 at the age of 78. Family went through the memory book that he still had after all this time. He had saved it for 43 years. And now it's a century old, of course. The card is 104 years old at this point in 2021. They found that the Babe Ruth card was still in there, and they decided they wanted to authenticate it, to make sure it was real, get it encapsulated and protected. They called several grading companies, but as you remember, if you were in the hobby at that time, the pandemic had slowed down grading dramatically. PSA was shut down. Other companies were either shut down or just incredibly slow to grade or to respond to inquiries. So he started calling auction houses, and he settled on Hunt Auction House. And the owner of Hunt Auction House said, "I think you might have something here." Yeah, I think so too. They got it sent off to PSA. It came back a 2.5. It had a light crease in it from something else that was on the page behind it in the memory book. So fun, really fun story here. Hunt ended up taking it to the National in 2021, displayed it there for all to see. This is the blank back Babe Ruth card, Pop 3 at the time, and still. There are only there's only one higher than this 2.5. That is a 5. None of the blank backs have ever sold publicly according to PSA. I don't know why Hunt's doesn't come up in PSA's auction prices realized, the APR on their pop report, etc. This one doesn't show up in there. I do have the amount that it sold for. I've already kind of given that up. But yeah, none of the blank backs have ever sold. The PSA 1 of the non-blank back, which has just an ad for Collins McCarthy candy, the one sold for, PSA 1 sold for $117,000 in August of 2022. That one, the one with a writing on the back, it's kind of like an ad back, has been graded 18 times by PSA. The highest is a 4.5. So this one, the one from the Stivers family, sold for $235,000. A staggering sum. I'd be curious to know what the 4.5 ad back would sell for now, or the 5 blank back. Just a really cool story. Make sure you're subscribed here. Attic Find Friday, in all likelihood, is coming to a close. It's very sad. I keep finding more and more. I actually have one already lined up for next week, but inevitably it has to come to an end. This is a great one. Let me know in comments what you think about this story. I loved this one. You know, you have lovebirds, they got married, he gave her a gift on their first date. Just a fun story. It's hard to say goodbye to a series that's 18 months old that has been a blast to do. It's coming. I don't know how much longer I can do these stories. If you have any stories, please email them to me, thejunkwaxhero@gmail.com. If not, the series comes to an end. It's all your fault. All right, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you have a great weekend. I'll be back tomorrow morning with another episode of Clearing the Bases.